The room buzzed with laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the hum of polite conversation as I entered the grand ballroom dressed in a simple black suit. It was my sister Julia's birthday party, and over-the-top affair with a red carpet entrance, a string quartet in the corner, and a glittering chandelier hanging over the dance floor like something out of a royal palace. As I stepped inside, I could feel the familiar heat of judgmental eyes sweep over me. Julia always knew how to command attention, and she made sure I felt like the outsider. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by her friends and coworkers, wearing a designer dress that cost more than my monthly rent. I offered her a warm smile and walked over to wish her a happy birthday, but she turned to the group dramatically and said, "Oh, look who's here. The mystery sibling, still working in, what is it again?" My face didn't change, but inside I felt the sting, still hiding behind that boring desk job. She added with a mocking tone, laughing, louder than anyone else. I could see people shift uncomfortably around us, unsure whether to laugh or look away. I kept calm, nodding. "It's good to see you, Julia. Happy birthday." I handed her a small wrapped gift. She took it, gave it a quick shake, then turned back to her crowd and said, "Maybe it's a stapler. That's what office workers give, right?" More laughter erupted. I stood there silently. I wasn't there to brag or make a scene. I had come to honor my sister despite everything, but clearly she had other plans for the night. I scanned the room and saw familiar faces from our childhood aunt, a few cousins, even our old neighbor Mrs. Barker, and then I saw her Julia's daughter, Chloe, standing near the buffet table, a smart young woman in her mid-20s with a quiet confidence. She had grown so much. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike when she was little, reading her bedtime stories. I hadn't seen her in months. As I started to walk toward her, Julia's voice rang out again. "Don't go, scaring off the guests with your depressing stories about government jobs and files." I stopped in my tracks and turned back. The entire room was now staring. I looked into the crowd and tried to keep my face neutral, but something inside me tightened. I had spent years avoiding these situations, quietly enduring Julia's snide remarks, her backhanded compliments, her need to put me down just to lift herself up. I had hoped that with age things would mellow, but clearly I was wrong. Still, this wasn't the time to start a scene. I turned away again and walked toward the buffet table. Chloe noticed me and smiled warmly. "Uncle," she said, her eyes lighting up as she hugged me. "I've missed you." I smiled back, grateful for her kindness. "I've missed you too. You've grown into a brilliant woman," I said honestly. "Graduated last year, didn't you?" "Yeah, top of my class," she said proudly. "And I joined the same agency you work for." My eyebrows lifted. "You did?" "I've been training for 6 months now. I was going to tell you tonight." I felt a rush of warmth. I had no idea she had been inspired by my career. "That means more than you know," I said. Behind us, Julia noticed the interaction and rolled her eyes. "Of course, she'd latch on to you. Everyone goes through a rebellious phase." Chloe stiffened slightly, but said nothing. I gently patted her shoulder and whispered, "Let it go. Tonight is about her, not us." But it was becoming clearer that the tension in the room was building. Julia wasn't satisfied with subtle digs. She wanted to humiliate me completely. She grabbed a microphone from the DJ booth and tapped it for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced dramatically, "but tonight, I have a surprise guest. My brother, the mystery man himself, decided to show up. Let's all give him a round of applause for taking time off from ... paper stacking." Some chuckled weakly. A few looked away, sensing something wasn't right. Julia wasn't done. "You know, when we were kids, I always knew he'd end up behind a desk. He was never one for the spotlight. But hey, someone's got to do the boring stuff, right?" The words hit harder than I thought they would, not because they were true, but because they were so far from the truth. I glanced at Chloe. She looked furious. Before I could stop her, Chloe walked toward her mother, standing straight and strong. "Mom, that's enough," she said calmly, but firmly. Julia looked startled. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. I'm just teasing. He knows I'm joking." Chloe took the microphone from her hand gently. "No, you're not joking. You never have been. You've always looked down on him because you never knew who he really was. And honestly, you don't deserve to know." Julia's face flushed red. "What are you talking about?" Chloe turned to the crowd, raising her voice slightly. "Everyone, I need your attention." The room quieted. "This man," she gestured toward me, "is not some boring desk worker. Missions you've seen movies based on. He's risked his life for this country more times than you can imagine. And while you've been sipping champagne and gossiping, he's been saving lives." A stunned silence filled the room. Chloe stepped back, stood at attention, and gave me a formal salute in front of everyone. "Thank you for your service, sir," she said, her voice unwavering. The gesture, simple and sincere, hit harder than any applause ever could. For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, a few people began clapping. It grew louder, stronger. Julia stood frozen, unable to process what just happened. I nodded to Chloe, humbled and speechless. The applause didn't feel like a victory over my sister. It felt like long overdue recognition. Not just for me, but for every silent worker in the shadows who never asks for praise. And in that moment, I realized something else. I didn't need Julia's approval anymore. I never did. As the applause echoed through the ballroom, I could feel my chest rise with an unfamiliar mix of pride and vulnerability. It wasn't about the recognition. I had never lived for applause. It was the validation of years of quiet sacrifice, the kind that no one ever saw or understood. I'd spent decades undercover, posing as everything from a small-town clerk to a foreign liaison. The work was demanding, dangerous, and painfully lonely. My own family, especially Julia, never knew the truth because it had to stay classified. I missed birthdays, weddings, funerals, all to keep others safe, and I never complained. But now, in this unlikely setting, under a chandelier and surrounded by people who once pitied me, my niece had just revealed what I truly stood for, and she did it with dignity, not drama. Julia, for once in her life, looked speechless. Her carefully constructed facade cracked as she stepped back, her wine glass trembling slightly in her hand. Her friends were now whispering among themselves, exchanging glances, some embarrassed, some surprised. I didn't feel anger. I just felt free. "I know you never wanted the spotlight," she whispered, "but I couldn't let her keep belittling you." I smiled at her. "You've grown into someone I admired deeply." She blushed and looked down. "I'm just following your example." That moment alone would have been enough for me. He extended his hand. I shook it firmly. Another guest followed, then another. In minutes, a line formed of people who once barely looked at me. They wanted to say thank you, to ask questions, to apologize for judging too quickly. Julia stood off to the side, shrinking, watching everything unravel. She was no longer the center of attention, and the worst part for her, no one had taken it from her. She gave it away with her own cruelty. The ballroom's mood had shifted entirely. The people who had once laughed politely at Julia's mocking now viewed her with quiet discomfort. Her daughter's bold reveal had not just exposed MIT, had exposed Julia to the deep-rooted insecurity that drove her to always position herself above others. I watched her trying to recover her poise, attempting to laugh it off with a few of her friends, but the laughter didn't come. Even her closest circle seemed distant now, unsure how to respond to the woman who had tried to humiliate her own brother, only to be silenced by her daughter's salute. I walked over slowly, Chloe beside me. "Julia," I said softly. She looked at me, forced a smile. "Well, that was ... dramatic." "Not my intention," I said calmly. "I came here to celebrate you," she scoffed. "Right? Celebrate me by upstaging me with some spy movie twist." Chloe stepped forward. "Mom, stop. No one upstaged you. You just didn't know the truth, because he never tried to flaunt it. That's your problem, you think. Quiet means weak." That silenced her. I placed a hand on Chloe's shoulder and gave my sister one last look. "You don't have to apologize, Julia. Just think about what you say before you say it. You never know the weight, your words, carry or who's listening." With that, I turned away. Chloe and I walked toward the outdoor patio where the cool night air provided a much-needed breath of clarity. The stars above sparkled with quiet majesty. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, not by the crowd, but by the one person who mattered most in that room. My niece, the next generation. Outside, away from the glitter and tension, Chloe and I leaned against the railing and talked. Not about the agency, not about the party, just about life. She told me about her training, how grueling it was, how some days she felt like quitting. But something inside her always pushed forward. "You," she said. "I thought about how you never gave up, even when no one noticed what you did." I listened, heart full. I hadn't realized I'd made such an impact on her. "It's strange," she continued. "All those years I saw you at family gatherings, I never knew, but you always looked calm, like nothing could shake you. That's what the job trains you to do," I replied with a soft smile. "You wear the armor outside so people feel safe, but inside sometimes it's chaos." She nodded. "But tonight you looked proud. I've never seen that before." I turned to her. "Because of you, Chloe. You gave me that moment, and I'll never forget it." We stayed out there a while longer, just talking. Then Julia came out. Her eyes looked puffy, as if she'd cried or nearly did. She walked over slowly, uncertainly. "Can I join you?" she asked. I nodded. She leaned on the railing beside us. "I didn't know," she whispered. I didn't want you to know, I replied gently. It wasn't about hiding. It was about protecting people, including you. She looked away, ashamed. I'm sorry, I just... I've always been loud, always needing to be the center of attention? I didn't realize how cruel I sounded until I saw Chloe salute you. It hit me like a brick. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, people grow. You still can. Chloe smiled softly. It was the first time in years the three of us stood together. Not as rivals or skeptics, but as family. That night, something shifted between us. Julia didn't become a different person overnight, but she became quieter, more thoughtful. She even tried to redirect conversations when others brought up my career, deflecting the attention back to Chloe or other guests. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the outsider in my own family. After the party, I drove home in silence, reflecting on the years of anonymity, of pretending to be average, of holding the burden of secrets that no one could know. I thought about how many times I had wished for a moment like this, not because I craved praise, but because I longed to be understood. And it came not through confrontation, but through the courage of someone I had once read bedtime stories to. In the following weeks, Chloe and I stayed in touch regularly. She began her fieldwork soon after, and occasionally sent coded updates. We had a bond now, not just of blood, but of purpose. Julia, too, surprised me. One morning I received a handwritten letter from her. It wasn't long, but it was honest. She thanked me for always showing up, even when she didn't deserve it. She admitted her jealousy that while I lived a life of service, she lived a life of spectacle. And that spectacle had started to feel hollow. I wrote back, told her that the past didn't matter as much as what came next. We started having coffee every few weeks. Small steps, but real ones. Healing, slow, and sincere. Months passed, seasons changed, and life moved forward. Chloe excelled in the agency, and I couldn't help but feel proud watching her flourish in a world I knew so well. At family gatherings, Julia introduced me with a different tone. No, not mocking, not sarcastic, but respectful. She even caught herself once, making a light joke, then paused and corrected herself mid-sentence. Old habits die hard, but effort is everything. One Thanksgiving, she made a toast. To family, she said. To those who speak loudly and those who act quietly. To the ones we overlook and the ones who remind us what matters most. Our eyes met. No words were exchanged, but the message was clear. She had changed. Maybe not completely, but enough. And for the first time, I saw her not as my tormentor, but as my sister again. That night, Chloe pulled me aside and said, "You didn't just change my life, Uncle. You changed hers too. You did that just by being you." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The moment said it all. The journey from being mocked to being saluted wasn't about pride. It was about being true to who you are, no matter who doubts you. Now, whenever I think back to that night, I don't remember the mockery, the laughter, or the stares. I remember the quiet moment when Chloe stood tall and saluted. I remember the silence that followed, the kind that only truth can create. That night became more than a turning point in my relationship with Julia. It became a story we all carried. Forward, a reminder that sometimes the people we underestimate are the ones who carry the heaviest burdens. And sometimes the loudest voices come from the quietest hearts. I never wanted fame or recognition. I just wanted to serve, to protect, and to do my duty. But thanks to Chloe, my story was finally heard. And through that, I gained more than acknowledgments. I gained connection, understanding, and most of all, peace. Family can wound us deeper than anyone else, but it can also heal in ways no one else can. And sometimes all it takes is one brave voice to speak the truth. One moment of honor to cut through years of misunderstanding. And that's exactly what happened at the party, where I was mocked until my sister's daughter, standing in uniform, and pride saluted me not just as a federal agent, but as someone finally seen.